Hello and welcome to Monster Monday. On today's episode, Jenny and I are going to talk about a Medusa, Quelle Surprise. All right, Jenny, it's time to talk about the Medusas. Not the D&D group, but the actual Medusa. So if you're at home in your 5th edition Monster Manual, we're on page 214. Jenny, read the first paragraph of the Medusa. Let's get into the mix of what this fearsome creature is.
As deadly as they are ravishing, the serpent-haired Medusas suffer an immortal curse brought on by their vanity. They lurk in quiet exile among the tumbled ruins of their former lives, surrounded by the petrified remains of past admirers and would-be heroes.
So the funny thing is that last week I did the Harpy, which is also like a person who was pursuing, some sort of unattainable quest / vanity / beauty, and then was cursed. And it would seem that this creature is also cursed. Now, before we read any further, let me just first share my ideas or my first earliest recollections of the Medusa. If you're old like me, you might remember the movie Clash of the Titans that came out in like 1981 with Mark Harmon, I think somebody. Oh, Harry Hamlin. Yes. Anyway, so it was all about Perseus and his important adventures, and one of the things he had to do was kill the Medusa, and it was like a claymation, early before computer effects things. But I remember being a little kid and being like terrified of that Medusa, because that Medusa could like sneak around, and in her lair in this like ruined temple, she was like the most stealthy, sneaky person. And if she got her gaze on you, you turned to a statue. And then I remember in D&D, because around that same time when that movie came out, of course, like we were all then influenced by Clash of the Titans, so a lot of our D&D games had to do with that movie, and thus began an interest in Greek mythology. But I digress. The Medusa was a scary creature, and I remember in D&D mechanically, the Medusa had the same powers as in the mythology. Like, you would just be turned to stone, and you were screwed. Like, there was no like, I'm going to get a wish spell. Like, that was unattainable. So let's see if the fearsome might of the Medusa from its mythological origins measures up to the Medusa in 5th edition. Carry on. Immortal splendor.
Sure, men and women who desire eternal youth, beauty, and adoration might pray to malicious gods, beg dragons for ancient magic, or seek out powerful archmages to fulfill their wishes. Others make sacrifices to demon lords or archdevils, offering all in exchange for this gift, oblivious to the curse that accompanies it. For those who strike such bargains gain physical beauty, restored youth, immortality, and the adoration of all who behold them, granting them the influence and power they so desire. However, after years of living like a demigod among mortals, the price for their vanity and hubris is exacted, and they are forever transformed into Medusas. A Medusa's hair turns into a nest of venomous serpents, and all who gaze upon the Medusa are petrified, becoming stone monuments to its corruption. Okay, so first thing, Medusas can be boys? Yeah, in the D&D world, because the original lore of Medusa in Greek mythology is just the one woman, but I suppose in this context it also makes it easier for players and DMs to be able to translate it to even very vain men could still technically do the same thing.
I like that. I think it opens up quite a few options. I will say this, that as editions have gone on from 1st through 5th, I think the companies that have owned D&D have moved away from using existing real-world mythology. So if you had the 1st edition Deities and Demigods, it was a book that was full of different cultural pantheons. There was the Norse mythology, the Greek mythology, all these different mythologies from real culture. And I think in that context, it was definitely more the conservative view of the Medusa being a woman. I like that this interpretation allows for there to be men, because it opens up potential storylines. And make no mistake, we're not just going to tell you about the Medusa. We're going to brainstorm some ideas for using a Medusa in encounters or adventures, or possibly in whole campaigns, which I could see this lending it to that. So the last bit is about their lairs, which is also cool, because as I mentioned, when I was a kid, I remember the scenes in the movie and how she just moved around in her lair like perfectly and with total stealth, and like created confusion and stuff like that. So Medusas live forever in seclusion, alienated from the world around them by their monstrous form and caprice. Their homes gradually fall into disrepair until they are little more than shadowy ruins covered with thorns and creepers, riddled with obstructions and hiding places. Foolhardy looters and adventurers who enter are often unaware of the Medusa's presence until the creature is among them. Bing, 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 bing. That's a huge DM note. It immediately gives me ideas for how to create an adventure where the party goes to a lair, unbeknownst to them, of a Medusa. A Medusa is subject to its own curse. By looking vainly on its reflection, it turns to stone as surely as any living mortal. As a result, a Medusa destroys or removes any mirrors or reflective surfaces in its lair. Also, a cool idea. All right, so let's take a look at the stat block, Jenny. Armor class 15, hit points 17 D8 plus 51. That's a lot. Speed of 30. Pretty decent stats. Challenge rating 6. So why? Why is this a challenge rating 6? I think we could start off with the first horrifying power in the description, which is the Petrifying Gaze. When a creature that can see the Medusa's eyes starts its turn within 30 feet of the Medusa, the Medusa can force it to make a DC 14 Constitution saving throw if the Medusa is incapacitated and can see the creature. If the saving throw fails by 5 or more, the creature is instantly petrified. Pause. I don't know that there are a lot of examples in D&D where a saving throw is measured more than just succeed or fail. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like usually you have to either succeed or you fail. But this specifically says that if you fail by a margin of 5 or more, that's a big noticeable difference. And that definitely is part of the explanation for why this is such a tough encounter. Otherwise, a creature that fails the save begins to turn to stone and is restrained. The restrained creature must repeat the saving throw at the end of its next turn, becoming petrified on a failure or ending the effect on a success. The petrification lasts until the creature is freed by the Greater Restoration spell or other magic. Okay, unless surprised, a creature can avert its eyes to avoid the saving throw at the start of its turn. If the creature does so, it can't see the Medusa until the start of its next turn, when it can avert its eyes again. If the creature looks at the Medusa in the meantime, it must immediately make the save. If the Medusa sees itself reflected on a polished surface within 30 feet of it, in an area of bright light, the Medusa is, due to its own curse, affected by its own gaze. Question. As a DM, would you make the Medusa make a save, or would it automatically petrify?
I think it would probably be fair, and it also depends on kind of what party you're putting it with.
Let's say a mid to high level encounter.
Yeah, I think especially with the specifications that it said, because it has to be, within 30 feet of it and in an area of bright light. So if, they were trying to do it in like a little dimmer of a light, then maybe it could make the saving throw if you're not really sure if it's bright light. But if they have like a torch right there and the mirror right there, then it would kind of have to be petrified. It'd be hard not to.
See, I would think that it would at least get a save against itself. But I could see that it would have the same rules. Like if I was doing this, I would have it make its own save. it would have to roll. You'd have to roll for it. So when you think about how this encounter could go down, it's pretty easy to set up the idea of an old ruined tower or a manor or a keep or a castle or something, right? And the party's heard rumors about something else that's there. But as a DM, I would start off by creating a scenario that draws the party to this place without ever mentioning the Medusa. So imagine decades have gone by, or maybe centuries, who knows? And there are rumors about this place, but you maybe have created a whole ecology that's dwelt outside of the house and around it, right? So for example, what could you put around an old ruined place? What would take up residence living around that old ruined place? What kinds of creatures? I mean, it could be as simple as like orcs, goblins, whatever. Hobgoblins, lizard folk, yuan-ti, snakes. Maybe something with snake people, right? So in other words, you create this whole thing about this place, but you don't really focus on the place. You focus on what's living there now. Maybe let's go with some kind of snake people or some kind of yuan-ti or whatever you want to use, but lizard men, whatever. So the party's drawn to go to this place to defeat them because these people now who have built up this, this encampment or whatever around this old ruined manor, they've been going down for raids against the local town or village, or maybe trading caravans, whatever. You could hook your players to go and investigate that, and then they go and they fight these lizard people, and they find out through their own investigation that none of these yuan-ti or snake people or lizard people or whatever ever went into the mansion. Maybe the party's smart enough to keep one of their victims alive and interrogate them. And in the interrogation, they find out that the snake people are afraid of the manor, that some of their people went in there and never came out.
Yeah, I think it's an encounter. It's also very important to kind of build up the suspense, and like you want to give some clues, like even like first entering some of these things, like if they found like some shattered mirror or something where it's easy for them to kind of think it might just be like a detail, but also if they really want to investigate it, then it's enough, because the creature itself is already scary enough if it's just a Medusa there, but it's that vibe of the party, and even them if they split up, then the way, because the most important part of it is this restrained. If certain members of the party are splitting up and they start to get restrained, then that's where you start to kind of build a scary environment where like players are just kind of dropping, they don't really know what's going on.
So let's rewind. You build up this storyline, this plot line for the adventure where this group of snake people have been doing raids against caravans and raids on the town. Even now they're becoming more bold, and that they've made their encampment out 20 miles to the northeast. And maybe you get a group of people who are smart in the party and they're like, well, what's out there? Okay, you make a history check, and maybe in the history check you say, well, not really very much. It's kind of open countryside. It was once land that was ruled by a noble family, but like that noble family passed into history. If they dig deeper and they do an investigation check, and maybe they go to like a local temple or a library, they find out there's like birth records of this noble family, or they find maybe even a book of local lore that details the fall of this noble family, and that the last living member of this noble family prior to their fall was this character. So you make up a character who is ultimately going to be the Medusa, but you never identify in the lore and the investigations that this person is a Medusa. You identify that like this person was the last of their noble line. They were obsessed with perfection, and they refused many suitors, because they weren't up to snuff or whatever. So you kind of hint at the vanity And maybe you say that they were like also well known for collecting like valuable objects of art and jewelry and treasures. So you kind of hint that, right? But you're never quite admitting that it's a Medusa. Some people in the party might jump to a conclusion that it's a vampire. Let them walk in with their holy water and their silver and whatever else they think is going to work against a vampire, because you haven't told them that it's a Medusa. But I also like your idea that if they are bold enough to find this encampment and they take out the snake people and then they just go investigate the manor, or they interrogate someone and find out that the snake people were afraid of what's inside of the manor, now they're going to the manor cautiously, maybe still thinking it's a vampire, a mummy, who knows. Then they find out when they go in, maybe in the foyer, there's, some old tapestries that are kind of like worn and mildewy, and you describe a setting that's very richly appointed but very dilapidated from time and neglect. Dusty hallways but statues and art pieces and fine furniture, but it's all in a state of disrepair and decay. And that's when you introduce, like, you see some vases that have been broken and some chairs and tables that have been turned over, and you notice there's like a broken mirror. So you describe the broken mirror in a room where there's other crap that's broken and dismayed. So they're not immediately going like, oh, broken mirror, it's a Medusa. You kind of like tease it in, okay? So in essence, what you're doing as a DM is you're rewarding the very observant players, but you're also giving everybody an opportunity. You're a little bit foreshadowing, but you're just teasing it. You don't want to give away the whole cow. So we've decided that this NPC who became a Medusa, male or female, doesn't matter, was a noble at some time. It would also be suitable to have painted portraits. So maybe there's a long hallway leading down and there's chambers off to each side, and maybe one room's like a parlor and another room's like a library and another room's like a sitting room and another room, and then it goes to the kitchens and the servant quarters. But like maybe along the stairwell or the hallway would be painted portraits of family members, right? So in that painted portrait, at some point you would have the actual portrait of what the person used to look like before they became the Medusa. Maybe you have little like plaques that are covered with dust, but if the players actively say like, I investigate the paintings, can I tell like who these people are? Make an investigation roll. And then, all right, as you're going along, you notice that each one of the paintings has a very small plaque, like a wooden little plaque underneath it that describes who they are and their birthdays and death dates. And then through that process, they find the last person, and there's a birthday but no death date listed. So then they're starting to maybe connect the dots if they did that prior research. But if they're brand new to the manor, if they just Leroy Jenkins right into the manor, like, kill all the snake people, go into the manor and loot, then they would never have known necessarily of that backstory of the noble family. So you can drop them another hit. Maybe in the library, there's a bunch of different books, but there's one book, if they do an investigation check, that jumps out. That's the local, like the lore of this family line. Like the history of the blah, blah, blah family, right?
Yeah.
So you give them a few opportunities. Okay, so Jenny, where is the Medusa hanging out in the house? Upstairs, main level, basement?
There was a couple ideas that I thought about for that, because there was one set piece that really jumps to my mind, and especially if you lay out a whole minis for this, could look very nice, and that's the actual stone statues. And some DMs might want to kind of like jump to them because they're so cool to introduce and like have them in like one of the first hallways. But I think that might be a little too, because if you jump right to stone statues, that's where it kind of gets.
You're almost giving it away.
Yeah. But
so where would be some good places? What would the Medusa do? Would the Medusa petrify these people and then like pick them up and move them to a gallery?
Yeah, that's what I almost thought of, like this big, like, and even like basement level. So it's not like the second like a player walks in and sees Stone Judge, they're like, okay, leave. But where it's like dimly lit and you walk down, and then with especially like the art portrait setup, at first you think like they might even have some old statues from when they were still a noble family. That's like a mother and a father that look very regal. So the player's like, oh, it's just more art. But
Yeah.
as it continues down the line, they look like, oh, well, you're not sure who this person is, and like there's heroes.
There's just a
and then
dwarf with an axe. Yeah.
And then, like, at the very end, you start to see, like, a Yuntai that's clearly, like, terrified and stoned like that. And then that's when, like, even if they don't realize it, that's kind of when the
Yes.
Medusa would kind of emerge.
Yes. Now, one thing to question is if you have a mid-level party or even a higher level party that's going to handle this, if the Medusa's solo, they live in solitude, are they going to be like the big bad end guy? Are they fighting to the death? Or over time, would they have figured out, like, maybe this manor has like little secret doors or lots of secret doors and little passages between walls, so they could peer through, you know, the old classic, like, there's a painting on the wall with the eye holes cut out. All right, go look at it. Okay, make a save. I mean, if you look at the eyes, you just walked into a trap. Okay, I just thought of a cool DM thing. We're gonna make this whole Medusa thing into an adventure, and it's like a haunted house. It's a house of horrors, except there aren't a bunch of bad guys, there's only one. But the Medusa moves around so much that they're just picking people off, right? So let's do the painting with the eyeballs cut out. Why not? You see all these family paintings, there's plaques with dates. The picture of the actual Medusa in their life is the one that has a fake wall behind it and a passageway, and you have the eyeballs cut out. And by the rules, right, somebody goes and looks at this picture and looks at the eyeballs, make a roll. Now maybe it's somebody with dark vision and they go in there at nighttime, so then it doesn't work. No.
Because it's still them, the only time that it has to be bright light is when it's the Medusa looking at its own reflection. Because it doesn't necessarily say that the Medusa itself has, like, that thing. And I feel like it's almost used to the dark, where, like, the players really have to, like, reflect it and, like, show them the light for it to work. Otherwise, it's just, because then it's not reflected.
So maybe we don't blow that picture with the eyes cut out gag right away. Maybe we save it for upstairs in one of the bedrooms, right?
Yeah.
But somewhere further in, you can immediately have this first encounter be an indirect encounter with the Medusa that involves making a petrifying gaze. It's another painting of the same person, but this time the eyes are cut out. You see these eyes in the painting. Make a perception check. You notice that there's something different about this painting. I look closer at it, okay? You don't even have to tell the player. What you could do is say, you know, if everybody goes into the room and they're like, we look around, we check the whole room for stuff. All right, everybody tell me, you know, here's what's in the room, you describe it. What are you all checking out? The person who says that they're gonna go check out the paintings on the wall, you can have a note already written that says, you notice that, you know, there are 4 paintings, each of the paintings has a wooden plaque underneath with a name and dates, and one of them has one that's just got a birthday but no death day. And if you hand that note to the person and they say, I want to check out that one, then go, okay, make a roll. You don't tell them what to roll for. They're going to assume that it's a perception check. What the roll is that they're making will be the DC 14 con save. So you have to, of course, know what your saves are for all your people, but have them just roll a die. And then you will note whether they made it or not, or how much they failed it by, and then you will describe accordingly. Now let's say they fail, then again, have a note prepared you pass to them, letting them know that they're starting to feel like their muscles tense up and that they can't move and they're restrained, and then have them make the follow-up save. If they fail by more than 5, you have that note prepared. So in other words, by doing the note passing thing, which that can be tedious for DMs, but by doing that, you're keeping the rest of the party from metagaming. They're going to assume that you're just passing things to that player because that he or she discovered something that they didn't discover. So maybe have some other notes of things prepared too, just to fool them all, keep them on their toes. All right, so then what's another thing that we can do in this House of Horrors? Maybe there are some other passageways that are parallel to hallways that have like fake wooden panels, and that like somebody in the back of the party could get ambushed, right? So like everybody walks by, nobody notices. The last person in the party, right? Like the wooden panel, you see a wooden panel open up in the door next to you. I look into it, make a roll. That is the strategy that a Medusa would use. The Medusa's not going to just wait in a room for like a party of 8 people and just be like bing, 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 making eye contact. He or she would try to pick off these people as they're going.
The whole hidden panel thing idea too is a really great way to like, I get this idea for almost like a rogue trap with like, a lot of parties have like the person that's like there for the treasure and like, oh, I'm trying to find like the treasure, I'm trying to find the gold. If they see like, oh yeah, there's this one kind of weird inset in the wall, and of course they investigate because they think that's where like the secret staff is, and then when they go to open it, that's where they just stare straight into a...
Yeah, and then if they fail, she can take them and pull them in, and then the party looks past, and everybody make a perception check. And the people who make the perception check, you just tell them like, you see the feet of your friend being dragged into a opening, and then you hear a slam, and it could be deadbolted. So like then they're trying to, well, are there locks? No. I look around for seams. Okay, it looks like it's a sliding door. I force it with my strength. Okay, DC 20, because it's a deadbolt on the other side, or a double deadbolt. So meanwhile, while they're wasting time, Medusa's slithering off with, the new trophy statue person, throws them down a chute that goes down to the basement, and then later on we'll go down to the basement and set them up in a nice, artistic way. Let's think of one more thing that the Medusa could do to mess with people. Maybe it'll help if we read these other attacks. The Medusa makes either 3 melee, 1 with a snake hair and 2 with its short sword, or 2 ranged attacks with a longbow. Okay, so what about this? What about you're down the long hall, the Medusa's gonna pop out, surprise, boom, boom, 2 longbow attacks, and then duck back in, having the advantage of surprise.
Another nice set piece I'm thinking with that long
Poison
hallway.
damage too.
Exactly.
So she's got poison from her Medusa whatever.
Is imagine like the already like desecrated long like dining hall with like the upturned chairs, and then even though it's like the nice silverware and goblets, they're all like look like they're almost like in an investigation, like forcefully unreflected and like purposefully dulled.
Yeah, like scratched out. Yes. It's almost, you know what it's like? It's becoming in my brain like Beauty and the Beast, but instead of the beast, it's a Medusa. You know what I mean? And you could even mix and match, like we did animated objects like a while back in Monster Monday. You can mix and match some of these things. What's to say that maybe the Medusa doesn't have a bunch of animated objects to help, in whatever capacity? Maybe the manor's not completely dilapidated. Maybe the basement, when they finally find the secret door to the basement, is just yet another labyrinth. Not just like stairs go down to one big open basement. Like maybe there's a whole bunch of rooms and more secret doors and hallways. So you could easily turn what could just be one simple encounter in one place into an entire adventure. And the Medusa could have allies. The Medusa could have, magical allies, animated objects, maybe a ghost friend or 2. You could add in or subtract whatever you need to scale it to fit the party and the levels that your party has. That was a good one. I'm glad that we randomly flipped to it. But coincidence? I think not. So we hope that you've enjoyed this episode of Monster Monday featuring the Medusa. because it's a pretty cool mob to throw at people. Lots of story potential there. So, thanks as always for liking, subscribing, pressing the notifications bell, and we'll see you for the next one. Bye. Hello and welcome to you mother Rafa.
Okay, you ready?
Yes.
Okay.
Hello and welcome.
No, not yet.
I'm gonna come in there and stab you with a blunt pencil. Do you understand me? I'm gonna jam it into your kneecap.
Okay.